My name is Dr. Bailey Dewey, and on behalf of the La Creole Board of Directors and Conference Committee, I want to welcome all of you to the Louisiana Creole Research Association's 19th Annual Conference. This afternoon, we are so excited to bring you in person and virtually, for those of us who are tuning in through Zoom, a delicious, pardon my puns, there's a lot of them, we're just going to go with it, panel titled Beyond the Bite, the Intersection of Ingredient and Identity in Creole Cuisine. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful event space, and specifically Tam Katie and the entire WYES crew for making this afternoon a reality. So thank you to WYES. And Tam's back there. Give her a thank you if you see her. And also a big thank you to our administrative secretary, Helen Marie, and our tech support, Stephen and Les Bayham, for making sure that our virtual participants are able to join us today. Thank you to both of you. Appreciate that. For our in-person participants, we invite you to a reception from 5 to 7 p.m. catered by Cecilia's Kitchen, which you'll learn a little bit about since head chef and owner Lorie is one of our panelists. And that will be immediately after the panel in the DeBolo Pavilion where you came in. During this reception, we will be presenting our La Creole Founders and Recognition Awards and also have music provided by Dwight and Connie Fitch. So we hope that you will all stay and enjoy that reception with us. A quick bit of housekeeping. Our panel will be about 2 hours today. And towards the end of our panel, or really whenever our moderator Vance decides, we'll be doing some Q&A, and Vance will be facilitating that. I will be handling the mic back and forth. So Vance will just tag me in when you're ready and we'll kind of do it that way. Unfortunately, Miss Linda Green, aka the Yakiman lady, is not able to be with us today. So we send Miss Linda our love and we look forward to having her with us for future events. All right, on to our panel. As you heard, if you tuned in for this morning's panel, themes of generation, land, language, and food are incredibly important when discussing Louisiana Creole culture. And when we were designing the panels for our 19th annual conference, the committee felt very strongly about not just bringing in experts in the field to discuss these topics, but also wanted to highlight those in our community who are using their gifts and skills to share our culture through their small businesses. Thus, Beyond the Bite was born. And we are so excited to dig into this fantastic panel with you today. So I'll do some introductions and then I will turn it over to our very talented moderator. First up, it's my immense pleasure to introduce to you our panel moderator who will facilitate our conversation this afternoon. This is someone that probably a lot of you already know, whose name is now synonymous with Creole food and sausage across the nation. Vance Vaucresson is a third-generation sausage maker whose family has been producing sausage products out of the 7th Ward in New Orleans since 1899. Vance and Julie Vaucresson, Julie's also here today, are the owners of Vaucresson Sausage Company and Vaucresson's Creole Cafe and Deli on St. Bernard Avenue, where they cook up some of the best food that you will eat. So please help me welcome Vance as our moderator. Next up, we have panelist Lorie Bell. Lorie is the owner and chef of Cecilia's Catering. She founded Cecilia's Catering after years of watching her mother, Cecelia Arnaud James, cook for the family and teach her everything there was to know about Creole food. An accountant by day, Lorie's passion is cooking, and she opened her catering business in 2014 to share her passion for food and her mouth-watering dishes with the greater New Orleans area, which we are excited to taste later during our reception. So please help me welcome Lorie. Next up, we have panelist Jeffery Heard Sr. Chef Jeff is owner and chef at Heard Dat Kitchen on Felicity Street in New Orleans. Through prayer, family, and hard work, Chef Jeff and his family opened Heard Dat Kitchen over 6 years ago. Chef Jeff was honored as one of Louisiana's chefs to watch for 2023, and his gumbo, red beans, and fried chicken have received the attention of food critics and fans nationwide. Please help me welcome Chef Jeff. And our final panelist of the day is Julie Vaucresson, aka the Creole Sausage Queen, and you can address her as such. Please make sure you do that. She is co-owner of Vaucresson's Creole Cafe and Vaucresson's Cafe and Deli. Julie is a TV and social media personality who you might recently have seen on the Today Show. I know I tuned in from Memphis and it was wonderful. She's a cookbook author and a sauce savant and holds an undergraduate degree from Xavier University and a graduate degree from the University of Notre Dame. Please help me welcome Julie. And with that, I will turn it over to our moderator, Vance Vaucresson.
How's everybody doing? Good. I would have dressed a little bit better, but I just finished pouring hog cheese to get over here. So I can't really have the finest of clothes on for that. So just know that it's something that I've done. So hopefully some of you, if you come in tomorrow, you'll definitely get to taste what's going to cool down tonight. I'm very honored to have been asked to moderate this because one of the things that I always come across when I do different festivals like the Jazz and Heritage Fest, French Quarter Fest, or anywhere where we have our visitors to come to the city. But also, I also find that there's a number of people who have grown up in this community that really do not know what Creole is. And I have always talked, lectured, challenged, debated, because there's a gross misunderstanding that I always have to feel like I've had to study more, I have to learn, dig into history. And there's so many wonderful people that I've spoken to and here who have given me so much information. Ms. Fatima, her book, so many people went just through conversations. I've learned so much. And what I find is that I tell people all the time, I said that Creole is a culture, it's not a color. Creole, basically, when you look at the etymology of the word and its history, all it means is indigenous and native of a French or Spanish colony. If it's French, it's C-R-E-O-L-E. And if it's Spanish, it's Criole, C-R-I-O-L-L-E. So when I talk about, well, where are the Creoles in the world? I said they're in France, Vietnam, Africa, anywhere where they were born. If they immigrated there and they were born, technically you are a Creole. And if we educate the next generation and those that need to understand, then that's the one common thing that can really bring everyone together. And I think about it, the one thing that we look at on our calendar where we all participate, no matter who we are, where we come from, if we're white, black, whatever we call ourselves, because race is a human construct, it was created. Mardi Gras. When you look at what happens in Mardi Gras, we all come together. Doesn't matter, your plot could be next to this one, it could be this one, but we celebrate that cultural tradition together. And if we can continue to educate people on what Creole is, it's a unifying factor. And I just did a boucherie for the Historic New Orleans collection. If you had attended that, it's called Pigtails. And a friend of mine I've done boucheries with, La Paz, charcuterie, Toby Rodriguez. Toby Rodriguez is from Lafayette, and he's one of the few that actually calls himself a Creole. He's an Acadian Creole. Because for us that truly know the history, around the 80s, people from that area, the Acadian Creoles, decided to extrapolate Cajun from its connection to Creole and market it separately, which confused everybody. And so everybody's thinking Cajun, Cajun, Cajun. And every time somebody tell me, what's Cajun? I said, well, you gotta be careful. Depending on how old you are, if I call you a Cajun, you might be offended because it's a racial slur. Cajun. And then you also have where those Cajuns or Acadian Creoles, they're country Creoles. I call it, and that's the thing Toby and we talk about. I say, you're a country Creole, I'm a city Creole. Because when it comes to cuisine, when we look at how they cook because of their location, they originally were what they call courriers de bois, trappers of the wood. So they used to make money from the furring. So they'd skin those hides and they'd get their money for the hides and they'd treat them out in the sun. Well, guess what else sat in the sun all day? The meat. And I did some research, and so at the end of the day, you need to eat. You cook that meat that kind of got hot, maybe a little rancid. So think about what they use to season: spice, pepper, dark roux, things to mask that. And that's the beauty thing about learning about these different cultures. But city Creoles, we got that blonde roux, We've got those some wonderful sauces. We have all that elegant cooking that came from that French and Spanish influence. And then the further you go up there, it gets a little more rustic. And then you got the German coast and the German influence. I mean, I can go on and on. I don't want to preach to the choir, but for those that are listening, I want you to understand that this is very meaningful to all of us, not just because of our own understanding, but if you've got children, if you've got grandchildren, you are watching them just not be connected to what our culture is. I asked some people who would be, I guess, my kids or younger, and they think that Creole is a food's ways. It's like seasoning, and it's so much more. So we're going to go ahead and talk and document this conversation to really give these wonderful food artisans their experience and their opinion of Creole from the culinary standpoint. So the first thing, I'm going to go ahead and move this along. And the first question I'm going to ask is, how do you define Creole cuisine? And so I'm going to ask my wife, Julie, how do you define Creole cuisine? You got to put them on the spot.
I knew this was going to happen. I think that in the most simplistic of terms, Creole cuisine mirrors the culture. So we have a rich culture here that is influenced by the French, by the Spanish, by African people that settled here, Italian, and all those things that they brought to it, melted together to make this delicious, wonderful food that we have here. And I think that would be my definition of it.
Okay. Chef Heard, what would be your opinion of Creole cuisine?
When I think of Creole cuisine, I think of a large pot that you just, when I think of Creole cuisine, I think of a large pot that you just throwing everything in and spending some time with and just cooking it down and marinating it and just loving on the pot. So that's the way I look at it. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Now Chef, give us your opinion. You have a rich family tradition in those. Your talents have been passed down within your family. What's your opinion of the definition of Creole cuisine?
Well, for me, it's the base of whatever dish I'm fixing. Usually, fresh seasoning is like the first thing I always use. Can you hear me? Okay. So mainly using onion, bell pepper, celery, what they call a holy trinity in a lot of my dishes. Everything has to be fresh. I try not to use frozen stuff. It just have a different taste to me. It takes me all day to do everything. With Creole cuisine, I always saw my mom doing everything from scratch. She never, used jar roux. She never used, she always used the butter when she did her roux for her gumbos and things like that. So I always just paid attention to what she did. And being a baby girl of 5 girls, I was the one that cooked like my mom. Now, don't accept anything else from any of my other sisters. I'm messing with my older sister. She's on a panel. Mia is on a panel. That's my older sister. But I was the one that kind of did everything my mom did and followed everything she did. And when she passed, I decided to start my catering company. And because everybody used to always say, bring a dish, bring this, and that's where I kind of started my basis, the Holy Trinity, fresh garlic, fresh rosemary, thymes. I use everything. So when I fix gumbos and things like that, you have a plethora of flavors, That's kind of my idea of Creole like cuisine.
Well, let's take it a little further. I think that we all come from our villages. In terms of the Creole community, you have a village. It's growing up, I used to always love walking around with my dad, Sonny Vaucresson. And you go around and he would always say, oh, you see, that's Mr. Pichon. Now, you know them Pichons. And he'd start talking about this one and that. Oh, that's them do for show. Now, they got 2 of them. You got to be careful. You got the do for show and the do for shards. Then you got the Sigui and the Sigu. Then you got the Ellsworths. Then you got the so many of those surnames. But what he used to always say is, now you got the McDonald's and the McKennas. They got that Scott Irish in them. Then you got the Torreganos. They got that Italian in them. Then you got all those English surnames that are mixed in there. Then we got the French, and then we got the Spanish. But yet we all came up in a community calling ourselves Creoles, especially if you came from the 7th Ward or anywhere else in the city, where you look back and you are considered an African-American within the Creole culture. So those surnames will define and tell you a lot of your family history. And so when we look at our village and the villages that created, like when we say chef, let me say this. A lot of the restaurants in this city, legendary, Antoine, Arnaud's, Broussard's, all those ones in the French Quarter, they were built by Black cooks. Okay? Dr. Rudy Lombard wrote the book, Creole Feast. They called those people chefs, but if you look, they probably did not go to culinary school. Somebody said, oh, you got to go get letters in order to be considered a chef. And then when around the late 60s and 70s, there was a movement for you to validate your kitchens, and you had to bring lettered chefs in. So what happened is certain families in the city, big restaurant families, started bringing in these lettered chefs and having those Black cooks to teach them how to cook.
Right.
And then after they did that, then they became back waiters, back staff, or let go. And so you have it where in this tradition, I'm not a lettered chef, I'm a sausage maker. I don't know why y'all call me chef. You know, and these two chefs, like Miss Chase said, they always called her a chef. She said, but I'm a cook. I never went to culinary school. She cooked at the old coffee pot in the quarter. And then she cooked somewhere else. And then she eventually went, when she married Mr. Chase, and he started cooking at the sandwich shop. Because you know that Dookie's was a sandwich shop when it started. So, and then she just developed that cuisine herself. So this is the foundation and the work, but it came from a village. So Chef Heard, tell me how your village helped you connect your culture to Creole cuisine.
Well, my village helped me connect coffee. My mom had 6 boys. Matter of fact, she had 6 boys in 7 years. So we was right behind each other. You know, so I hung out in the kitchen with mama because my brothers would eat up everything, you know. They would just, you know. So my mom, she held her head up high when she was stirring the pot for us. And we noticed that, you know, she took pride in feeding her boys, you know. So we just always wanted to beat each other to the table. That's another thing. When she called our name when the food was fixed, we outside playing. She called our name. You better get inside because we sitting down and we eating together. And so food was a big thing for my mom, you know. So my brothers and I, we all, you know, we like to eat. So we made a big thing out of it as well. So out of 6 of us, 5 of us can cook pretty good, you know. So that was the whole thing, is just the culture of family. It was always about, you know, the family sitting down and enjoying a great meal. So it was something that my mom took very serious.
Wonderful. All right, Julie, what about your particular village and the uniqueness of it and where it came from and how it's influenced your cooking?
So my mother was a widow, very young, 39, with 4 kids. She's from New Iberia. She came here, very little family. So I spent a lot of time in the kitchen helping her. And I started wanting to cook full meals at 12 years old. So my mother would write out the recipes for me, and she had a specific way of doing things. And but you had to do it that way. This is the way that you do it, even down to certain meals. If she had fried fish, you're going to have potato salad and peas. It didn't deviate. If she made crawfish étouffée, she did a lot of things too, her influence from New Iberia. We would have potato salad with that. It was certain things that we had to have. And I think that culturally, I could go into anybody's house, and if they have fried fish, you better believe it's going to be some green peas, potato salad, or maybe mac and cheese. But I think that as a village, I had to learn how to cook because she had 4 kids. well, I wanted to learn. My sister did not. And my two brothers, she never even offered that to them because this was what girls did. We cooked. So I was able, that was how my village, I learned everything she knew from New Iberia, all the rice dressing and that kind of stuff, as well as the things that we cooked here. We had to go to Circle to get our bell peppers. I would go with her. She would go to all these different stores. I don't even understand how she had the time to do that. But she got the sales paper out. We're going to get our seafood from here. I'm going to get my peppers from here. I'm going to the Bell and I'm going to get this. And I think that those influences have affected me and even the way that I do things. And you can vouch for that. We cook the same type of meal when we have it. And I'm passing it on to my children. They're now learning how to make hogshead cheese. They're cooking the same things that I cook. They cook the gumbo and just different things. So I think that's how my village influenced me, as well as other family members. I remember getting a recipe from an aunt of mine, and the recipe said, a nice piece of meat. I'm like, what is that? She said, go to your butcher. The butcher's gonna tell you. Well, he don't know what a nice piece of meat is. You know, that kind of stuff. And I think that that's the richness that is in this whole village of cooking.
All right, Chef, I know you've already kind of expounded on your village. Kind of give us a little bit more as you see how we're going with this question, you know, your influence and how it's connected you to the culture.
Right. Like I said, I'm the baby girl of 5 girls, and my mom always cooked at home. She didn't have money. We didn't have money to go eat out at McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut. Everything was cooked at home. So every evening we'll sit down and eat dinner. I think sodas were like once a week. We had milk, we had water. That's what we had when we sat down and ate. My mom, for the holidays, she was always everybody in the family. She's one of 11, grew up in the St. Bernard projects, and all her brothers and sisters will come in, get food from my mom all the time. Like, we want her gumbo, we want mom's mac and cheese, everything my mom cooked. Everybody used to always just come to the house to eat it. And that's kind of where our village comes from, because we didn't go out and eat fast food and junk food. We all stood pretty fit. We had the meat, we had a protein, we had a vegetable, and we had a starch, rice, dressing or something like that. That was our dinner. And we didn't snack, and desserts were maybe once a week. You know, we didn't have desserts every day. So it's just that with my household now, I do cook a lot, and everybody looks forward to me cooking. A new thing that my husband got me doing now, he's from out there in Raceland. I always call it the country. It's not far, but I call it the country. He likes the oxtail. So I learned how to do oxtail, but I don't do it like Jamaicans do it. I do it with potatoes and carrots and tomato. And my husband loves it. And he always invite everybody over. I'm like, you know how expensive oxtail is? Stop inviting everybody over here. But that's his favorite. Every holiday, his birthday just passed November 5th. And that's what he wanted for his birthday. What you want for your birthday, babe? Oxtail. Of course you do, you know, so it's different little things. It's new things that I've introduced to my family. And even like with my father, who recently passed away, he used to call me, say, bring me something that your mama used to cook, some red beans or whatever. But with the new generation, you know, if you do gumbo, they want the bigger shrimp. They don't want the shrimp that your mom could afford back in the day. You know what I mean? You know, your parents used to cook what they could afford. So my dad said, what's these big old shrimps up in here? They don't taste right. Finish the plate, lick the plate clean, but still gonna complain about it. That's not how your mama used to make it, you know. So that's kind of where I got my village from, and I do enjoy cooking.
Thank you, thank you. All right, well, when we talk about cooking, we're talking about what we use to cook. I know Chef Bell talked about, you know, the Trinity and those things. I think that when we look at a lot of the ingredients that we use, we really got to think about what is the origin of those ingredients. I think we take for granted that, or we don't really think about the port of New Orleans at one time was the busiest port in the world. So many people came through this port and settled not only in New Orleans, but in the outlying parishes. So that's why you have, when you look at our history, some of the things that came through this port that we use in our cooking has come from other places. Like everybody knows okra. Where did okra come from? Okra's in Africa, and then the Spanish okra, obviously. When you look at the trade, where things have gone, when you look at the history of the slave trade, where things were and how it came here, certain of spices, certain things that we get came through there, but they all came through this port. And different people who came through this port contributed to the uses of some of those ingredients. So when we look at some of the things that we cherish but that we take for granted, I always like to tell people, when you hear about those Torreganos, I bring them up because that's our Italian Creoles, right? And I'll say it like that because Creole is the culture. So it's going to be on the end of the ethnicity. So it's the Italian Creoles. And so when they came in, I remember they used to have the corner stores. They were all in the French markets. They used to do the fruits and the vegetables and the meats, and they used to make Italian sausage. And I remember my grandfather had a stall in the St. Bernard Market. And I have a bill of all the people that were in there. You can see the last name Odo, and you see some of those Italian names, some of those old French Creole names. And I talked to my dad, and my dad said, oh, that's why a lot of Creoles love Italian sausage, because they used to make it. But also, if you look at how Italian sausage is made and how hot sausage and chorizo is made, very similar. It's just a deviation of certain seasonings. And that's why you have some of the Italians that make hot sausage, and we make Italian sausage because we've always had a recipe. And so that's that cultural influence when you see. And then, of course, pane meat, breaded veal. Now, who influenced that? Who gave us that as Italians? Let's be correct, because this is the thing. Let's say Sicilians, because any good Sicilian will curse you out if you call them Italian. Okay, so that pane meat, that breading. And then when we make pane meat, what kind of breading do we use?
Italian breadcrumbs.
Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. So it's those little things that kind of give you the idea of the origins. And so when we look at some of those things, when it looks at the key ingredients or even the techniques of cooking, I'm going to ask you guys, that's central to our cuisine, what are some of the ingredients that you know are specific to our culture that you use, and maybe the techniques or the cooking techniques that you utilize that has been passed down that really make what you make a culturally unique Creole dish? Chef Heard, I'm going to start with you.
Well, one of the techniques is a cast iron skillet, and a lot of things you don't realize. My mom would fry chicken in a cast iron skillet with just halfway full of the cooking oil, and she would flip the chicken halfway. Well, two reasons: she couldn't afford to fill the skillet all the way up with the cooking oil, but it also made it a lot crispier when you flip it on the edges. It came out a lot crispier. So that was one technique she used all the time for us to get the crispiness out of the chicken. But technique, everything is really cooking. I do a lot of cooking by my eyes. I can see when it's where it needs to be at, so that's the biggest technique, is knowing how to look at what the process you're trying to get your dish to, whatever that might be you cooking, that you got to be able to eye and tell when it gets to where you need it to get. So you do, I done got it up in age now, keep these glasses with me now, because ain't even that can fool you now, because I put the glasses on and I say, oh, that's not looking right now. I take the glasses off, make sure it's looking the way it is. But technique is, it's everything in cooking, and then you play with it. You find out this adding a little bit of water work better than adding a little bit of cream, so it's all about working it as you go and paying attention. That's the number one thing too, is paying attention what works, and then you remember that certain step you took when you cooking something.
Do you have any unique ingredients that you really, really love to utilize in a lot of your dishes, or that you really feel are needed for it to be considered a Creole dish?
Well, a lot of, I would say, is something that's smothered down. Once you cooking things down with the roux and the gravy and stuff and tomatoes, that's a process. If you're cooking tomatoes, if you want it to be right, you're gonna let them cook a while. So that's one of the biggest things is, some people want to cook quick. Everything can be done quick. So that's a technique as well, is being able to again, that takes eyes as well as when you cooking to understand that it's at the point where you need it to really come out the way you want it to.
Okay. All right. Chef Bell, when we talk about, you mentioned some of the Trinity when you cook, and a little bit of some of the techniques. Let's expound on, maybe some of the other good ingredients that you've come across, like when you said you deviated in terms of your husband's preferred recipe for oxtails. What are some of those other ingredients and things that you use, and maybe some of the techniques which have you used to form your cooking style, which kind of gives it that overall connection to the Creole cuisine?
I do utilize different meat seasonings. In New Orleans, a lot of people tend to use like the Tony Satcherins or Lorie seasoned salt, things like that to season everything. I feel that seafood versus veal versus pork all should have a different seasoning to bring the flavor of that meat out. So every meat or protein that I use, I try to use a different dry seasoning. I always start off with, of course, like I say, my fresh seasoning, the bell pepper, onion, celery, things like that, with a lot of my bases to give it flavor. But I do use a lot of dry seasoning, and I do a different blend for each protein. It just brings the flavor out a little bit better to me. As opposed to using just Tony's Satcherins for everything, even though Tony's is a pretty good seasoning. I just don't like my food to all taste the same way.
Okay. We talked about the next generation. We've got some young people here, and the beautiful thing is in looking out, a lot of times you'll see, like in our Catholic church or wherever church you go to, you see a lot of gray hair in church. You don't see that many young people anymore. And then in some of these particular situations, we have where now we've got a few young people here. Thank you for coming. And we have some people who are, multi-generations that are trying to learn and preserve our culture. Well, the same thing in regards to how our Creole food plays a role in preserving those cultural traditions. And then how do we then, in our own way, pass them down to the next culture? How do we get the younger people interested in the cooking, taking the time to cook? I my son, I get upset because he's always talking about, I got my food with DoorDash. or Dad, can you go pick this up? I said, we got food in the refrigerator. Called leftovers. They eat one meal and then they can't eat it the next day. I said, I don't know where you live. You better go starve. But I think that culturally, we have this food ways and these techniques and these traditions. And I think the challenge is for us to introduce our younger generations to them, and then to give it to them in a way where they can feel connected to the culture and to the traditions. So I'm gonna start with Chef Bell. With the younger generation, how do you feel, that you've been able to kind of connect them to those traditions culturally and passing them down so that they may be able to, say, hey, one day my mom was the one that taught me to cook, and they may take it to another level?
Well, I have two daughters. One is 29, one is 19. My baby girl, Victoria, she goes to LSU for veterinary medicine now. She actually does the baking for my catering company. Sticky Vicky Sweets is the name of her little section, and she's been doing it since she was 13. And she doesn't do fancy cakes or pretty cakes. She does home cakes, like praline. She does the ooey gooey cake. She does pineapple upside down, which is my husband's favorite. She does the cupcakes, the brownies, everything she does. And it was a battle. Everything, it was like, if it didn't come out right, because you're trying to rush, you want to be in the kitchen with mama because you want to be under mama. You're going to do it right. You have to throw it away, start over from scratch. She lost so much money doing that, but guess what? She perfected it, and people for the holidays, they call an order. And now that she's at school, she's like, I was like, you could be making some money, girl. You know what I mean? Like, she comes home every weekend, y'all. She comes home every weekend and she always takes home whatever I cook for the week. And she also comes home and she'll bake something, like she did the pralines and the ooey gooey cake for the little reception today. But she had to go do some volunteer work for LSU vet school. So that's why she's not here. But she did do her coming from school yesterday and helped me do that. So she just liked to be under me. And because she likes to be under me, she kind of stayed in the kitchen. She actually has a boyfriend who's from the Philippines and he loves my cooking. And he's in the military. So as soon as he come back, he's like, Mom, I want some jambalaya and I want some this. And he's allergic to seafood. But he wants my stuffed bell peppers. I want the stuffed bell peppers with everything in it. I'm like, bring your Benadryl. You know what I mean? But I mean, as far as that, like all her friends will come over and she has friends from everywhere, from Palestinians, she has Asian, she has Hispanic friends, she has friends from all over the place. And they all love to come over to my house and eat. And she'll say stuff like, my mom's gonna be fixing I'm sorry, the salmon and asparagus. And I'm looking at her like, girl, we don't get no stamps. Stop telling people I'm getting fixing salmon and asparagus, you know. So she'll invite everybody over, but whatever she tells them that I'm cooking, I'll usually cook for them and they enjoy it. Some of them don't eat pork, some of them don't eat they eat kosher or whatever. And I try to like whatever they ask for. So that's the hangout spot, Mom's house. That's where everybody comes and all her college friends, like, what you brought back this weekend? So she said she's gonna, Mama, bring home some crab cakes and I'm bringing this and I'm bringing that. So she have all her little containers ready to go back to school with. But that's how I kind of keep her involved. My oldest daughter, she just come and pick up the food. Like, she knows how to do the sandwiches. She does the platters, worked in Winn-Dixie and Rouse's doing like delicatessen type stuff. She'll do it to make a couple of dollars, but it's not a passion of hers. But Vicky, she loves doing when people make a big fuss over her cookies or something, she likes all that attention. So that's how I keep them involved in it.
Wonderful. Julie?
Okay, well, you skipped me on the last one about the ingredient. I have something to say about that.
Oh, I didn't know I skipped you. My bad.
Because there is an ingredient that I find very important that I have to use. I feel no authentic Creole gumbo is authentic without hot sausage. Let me say that again. You have to have hot sausage. Come see us, 1800 St. Bernard Avenue. Now, what was the question again now?
I thought you was gonna say bay leaf or filet.
Sausage. I
Yeah.
use it in my gumbo, my dressings, everything. Go ahead.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I do want to say, there's two of us left that are part of this sausage making tradition in the
Yes.
Creole community. And I want to give credit to Kevin Bashman, who still makes
Absolutely.
his sausage and his hot Creole sausage, and myself. There's other people who make sausage in the city, but if you want those that are representative of our culture and are historically in our neighborhoods, it would be between the two of us. So I want to give him that credit as well.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying is in terms of preserving our cultural traditions by passing them down to future generations. You talked about, your daughter and learning to cook and just kind of what you're going through in terms of passing down those things that your mother taught you to our children.
Well, I'm writing a cookbook. I will be done actually next month. So that's one way of preserving a lot of this. But I also think we live it. Typically on Friday, we eat seafood. It's just what we do. They look for that. They know when it's Mardi Gras, we're going to have beans, we're going to have certain things like we are very steeped in tradition. And Good Friday, we have a crawfish boil. So that means Easter Sunday, we're having crawfish bisque.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was the only one to make it. And so this past year, I finally made it with her, documented everything, even took pictures, because those kinds of things are going to die off if we don't.
Right.
My daughter was so excited about it. She now wants to learn. So I was like, yes, praise God. So I think that's what it is. We just have to be more open to exposing them to these things. And I think they respond to it. And when they grow up, they'll remember it, and every Friday, they'll do the same things and have the same meals that we have for Thanksgiving. You know, we would always do oyster patties and just think, and we have to go to Mackenzie's to get the oyster patties and the patty shells. So I think that they learn through us and by us doing it.
Okay. Chef Jeff?
Okay, for me, I work with all my kids. Well, my son, I worked with him for 2 years when I first opened the place. He actually was the only one of us that actually ever worked in the kitchen, my son. So he came in and helped me put the menu together and some of the dishes together. And we call him the skeech man, what means like he doesn't make the product, he just makes the products better. Say like I have a pepper jelly that I use for my fish dish, he turned into a sauce for chicken wings. So we call it a ski sauce. But he have the gift. It's in the DNA. Actually, I've found since I've been in the restaurant business that my dad and 2 of his brothers were chefs in the Navy. So my cousin from San Francisco tell me about their dad was a great chef. So it's in my DNA actually. But now in the kitchen, I have my 21-year-old daughter. She's my sidekick in the kitchen, and my oldest daughter runs the front of the house. And my 21-year-old, she can put the food on the plate remarkably. I never worked in a kitchen. So, the pressure, I was a server all my life. I was either a server or a restaurant manager. So I gave the line cook a hard time all the time. Where's my food? But now I've seen the pressure of the tickets coming out of the machine, and you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get it out, and it's really stressful. But as far as my kids, all of them have the talent of cooking. So now I'm trying to talk my 21-year-old into taking the reins, tell her we can promote you. We can send you on Top Chef or something like that and get your name out there. Because at one time, in the restaurant business, it was all about the maitre d', the front of the house. You had connections to get a good table. And then all of a sudden it flipped where these chefs became these famous people. All of a sudden they can call their own shots on how much you get paid to show up, and that kind of like, I was like, wow, I might want to do that. But in the service industry, I fed my family very well being a server in all the fine dining rooms and all. So it would be a setback to actually go in the kitchen behind the line, because in a nice restaurant, the kitchen staff doesn't get paid much. They are told that you're learning this skill and you can take it somewhere else and get paid. So that's the struggle of working in some of these fancy restaurants. If you want to get paid being a cook, your best out is to go work in a big hotel that have more money to pay you. But for the most part, little restaurants, they don't pay much. So right now I'm putting into my 21-year-old head that she's great. So you can do this, but kids have their own ideas of what they want to do, and you can't stop them. Like my son, after he helped me put it together, he went back to wanting to be a rapper. That's his thing now. He's out doing, but I also have grandkids. I have 2 grandsons that's 7, and they stay at the kitchen table. So I think they might be the ones that I really mold into being the chefs, because they love it. It's like, for myself, I just love to smell food. I used to walk in Kraus just to walk in I used to go pay my mom bill, but the kitchen was right there. And man, that food smells so good in that kitchen. It's like, so that was always something that got me going, just to smell the food. But so now, my daughter, my 21-year-old in the kitchen, we work side by side, like 10 hours a day. Actually, last week, I looked at her and I told her, I said, you might be my best friend. You really get to know a person when you work with a person. When I went to work 12 hours a day and come home, I never actually seen her or my kids or my wife. So now that we work together, I really like my kids. I really found out who they are. Now, my wife, that's a different story. She's not allowed. She don't know how to say yes, chef. So I tell her, I'll be home. When I get home, you can boss me around. You
Well, you know this is recorded.
know? I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
For look, 40 years. So I think I just survived this long. I'll be all right.
I got some couch duty, that's all.
Um,
I know, like, for me growing up, you know, it was always hearing about my grandfather and then my dad, and then always going places with him. He used to always tell people, this is the one. I had two older brothers, and we all worked in, you know, we were at free child labor. We worked sweeping, making stuff, doing stuff in the meat market. And, you know, each one got a taste of if they wanted to take it forward. My oldest brother worked, but he wanted to be an opera singer. So he went off and studied music and unfortunately died a little young. And then my second brother, who my dad just thought was going to be the one, just didn't have an interest. So here I come, and he's just saying, well, you know, you're going to be the one. You're going to be the one. And I just didn't think about it until I went off to college. I went to Morehouse in Atlanta, trying to say I need to get away, everything. And I had a job with Kraft General Foods, and had a senior came back and spoke to us. He was a star in the business department, and he went off to corporate America. And he came back and he talked to us, and he said, you know, there's a ceiling that I can't break through in corporate America. I know it, I see it, doesn't matter how far I get, at that time at least. And he's like, I wish I could be like some of my clients who had these small family businesses. It's endless what they can do and how much they can pass generational wealth on. So I heard that. And then my dad came basically to school one day and said, man, look, I just want you to reconsider. I need your help, you know? And so I came back. I was depressed for 6 months. But then I just saw the importance of it. We worked together. If we didn't fight every day, it wasn't a productive day. Because he had his old way of doing things. I'm trying to bring in new theories, and it was just butting the heads. But I had 7 wonderful years with him, and then he had a heart attack and died. And then at that point, the next day I opened the door, and I told my workers, I said, hey, Sonny died. I said, it's a new day. Let's keep it moving. And so been doing it ever since. So it's just one of those things. If you put them by the hip, like you have, somebody may step up and continue this tradition for what you've instilled. All right, so moving along, I want to ask the question where we talk about, I mentioned about how certain other ethnic groups have come through this port and have influenced our food. We talked about the Sicilians, how they've contributed to our foodways. Let's not forget about the Irish who've come here and influenced our foodways. One of the biggest restaurant families in the city is of Irish Creole heritage, the Brennans. And then in the fall of Ho Chi Minh, we had a lot of people who already Creole come on down. And the Vietnamese have contributed greatly to our foodways and have turned around in all of our foodways and given it back to us. And they become the corner store merchants. They make the gumbos, they make the sauces, they make everything. And it's very good because it's very much like what we do. Dong Phuong Bakery is an example of where French bread is made in Vietnam. And they came and they put a spin on it, made it softer, made it sweeter. And now they are a James Beard award-winning business and very popular. And we've also had, of course, the African Creole influence, and their contribution is just so much. And then, of course, the French, the Spanish. But another one I tell people about is the Filipino influence. Because people don't know, St. Malo, which was on the outside of St. Bernard Parish, was the oldest Asian community in the United States, founded in the 1600s. And those Filipino communities, when they talk about those Islenos in St. Bernard Parish with all them Spanish surnames, we don't know that the Spanish occupied the Philippines for 400 years. So guess who followed those Islenos? Those Philippines. And I have a friend of mine, y'all might know the Monego family. Cirillo Monego was a basketball coach. Maximina Monego, they were Filipino Creoles that just brought some of the wonderful foodways and styles from the Filipino community and introduced it. So we've got all these influences. We may not know where some of those foodways come from, but when we look at it, they do come from some of those people that have contributed. So my next question is, how have you seen our Creole cuisine become influenced by other cultural traditions and then how we may influence them in return. So knowing some of the people that, you know, in our city that have cooking and providing stuff in the food industry, how has some of them maybe influenced you? And then how have you seen some of our cooking styles and techniques have influenced them? I'll start with you, Julie. Since I missed you last time.
He did. I think back to what you said about the Italians and like the pane meat and those types of things. We've been influenced. Paella is very similar to jambalaya. Dishes like that, I think, are very heavily influenced in the Creole community.
Okay, Chef Heard.
Well, for me, I worked with a lot of Asians, and when I was in the restaurant business, I had a lot of my service was Asian. So I used to go to the festivals, the New Year festivals and all, and I loved the different sweets and bitterness of different sauces they make. But one thing I really use a lot that they introduced me to was rice wine vinegar in a bunch of my sauces. But again, you can take so many different influences and put in the pot. I like to sneak things in my pot and make you wonder what is it. And when you eat, you know, like I'll make a shrimp bisque with say tassel ham, but the stock I'll put some smoked ham hocks in it, and then when people eat it, they say, I cannot figure out, I like this flavor, but I just can't figure out what it actually is. You know, so it is great to have that influence all the different cultures and all, and then you'll be able to just play with them and see what works with what. And when you discover something new, it's just amazing. You know, it just brings a joy in the customers. That's what I like to see. And they just tell me about, man, it just, I leave them speechless, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, but again, you know, when a cook wants to try every ingredient that he can and work it and make something great come out of it. So again, you know, I like I would say lately I've been doing a lot of the Asian influence and Middle Eastern influence as well. I've been using a lot of curry and turmeric and cumin and things like that. And it's been coming out great.
Wonderful. Chef Bell.
It's pretty much the same like everyone else. I never really thought about it, actually. I've been exposed to a lot of different cultures. Like I said, my daughter's like a little gumbo herself with all of her friends, and she brings home different dishes, different seasonings. Mama tried this, or you know, the purple sweet potato from the Philippines, from my Filipino boyfriend. He'll have a cake, and it's not sweet at all. And I'm a big sweet eater. But you know, but it has a delicious taste to it, and it's something different. So I have noticed trying a lot of new different things. I'm kind of classic as far as a lot of my recipes, only because when people order from me, it's always people who has been ordering from me for years, and they always order the same thing. Like it's bell pepper season, right? So stuffed bell peppers. Everybody's telling me, so I want to order a pan. I'm like, give me a second. I got this event coming up. You know, let me figure out what I'm gonna be doing, because I still have to cook for home and I still have a full-time job. So, you know, I try to stay with traditional things that people would order all the time. My family gets sick of eating the leftovers. I will say that. Cause it's like, what you got? We got pasta again? Like, oh yeah, pasta again, you know, but, I do try to switch it up a little bit.
Wonderful. I know that, you know, Chef Heard has talked about, you know, the curry and the turmeric and some of those Indian seasonings, and then some of the influences you've had from your daughter's friends. And I know, you know, we tend to get introduced to a lot of things. I've done some things within the, with a lot of our Acadian Creoles and their food ways and techniques. I know when we started making sausage and going into stores, boudin became popular. So we didn't know what boudin really was. We had to learn it. So Miss Lil Proudhon came down, who was Paul Proudhon's aunt. We met her and knew her. She came down to teach us boudin. So when she made it, my dad and I looked at each other and said, "That's Creole rice dressing."
In a casing.
Just in a case, you know? So we said, "Oh, shoot, that's what it is." So we just went ahead and so we started making boudin, you know? And the rest is history. So I think that we have challenges and we also have opportunities that we face as Creole chefs and even food enthusiasts. I don't want, those that are on the periphery of cooking. We've got a lot of people, especially with social media, who monitor, comment, who present things in a certain format that is very much followed and respected as opinions in the food community. So we want to include those food enthusiasts who definitely write and contribute and give great points of view in regards to a lot of the cooking that we do. I mean, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we face in preserving and sharing this heritage? I think that we get a lot of people who come down, being a tourist city, hearing a very skewed representation of what Creole is, what Cajun is. And there was a famous chef, I call him famous because he got some notoriety, and he was running around the country doing these tailgates at football games. And he kept saying that shrimp étouffée was a Cajun dish. Kept saying, "Oh, shrimp étouffée, that's a Cajun dish." And I was just like, fingers on a blackboard, and they mislabel things. And it's interesting because jambalaya, we got two types of jambalaya. We got red jambalaya and we got brown jambalaya. Now, tomato is important to Creole New Orleans. Remember we talked about city Creoles? That red jambalaya is what I grew up on, a lot of us. But then that brown jambalaya creeped in here, and that came because the use of the tomato was not as much in the country. Mm-hmm. So we have that Creole jambalaya, that city jambalaya, and we have the brown jambalaya. And same thing with gumbos. Those dark roux that we get that come and they say, "Oh, this is how you might see Top Chef," and they cooking and they call another one with the blackboard, Emeril Lagasse, the king of Creole cooking. I respect what he's done, but as a traditionalist, he's from Falls Rivers, Massachusetts, and he came down here and learned how to cook within the Commander's Palace system. Mm-hmm. Okay, and who preceded him? Paul Proudhon. Now, they make these dark roux and they make people think this is New Orleans Creole cooking. And it's just not the case. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we face in terms of trying to preserve and correct, some of those interpretations? So I'm going to start with Chef Bell and we'll move on down.
Well, for me, it's mostly these new age kids with the TikToks. And they like cooking this stuff and they're throwing boiled eggs and everything. And some of this stuff I'm looking like, I would never. I wouldn't. I mean, some people, they like it and it's like, oh, it's a new twist on this, or throwing anything in a boiled seafood. Like the new thing is like a fiery crab. And it has all this grease and you dip your seafood, no, season my seafood. Don't give me that grease and butter. I don't want that. You know what I mean? So I don't even go eat, those ball bags at a lot of those places. I want my Zatarans or a Louisiana brand seafood ball with my seafood. That's how my seafood tastes a certain way. So for me, that's the biggest challenge. These new age, and I think they just came up with something, and I don't want to offend anyone, but it's gumbo greens. I don't know if y'all heard of that. That just that chalkboard you talked about. I'm sitting up there going, greens just have a whole different flavor, and for it to be, I don't know. I mean, maybe it works. I'm not trying it. You know what I mean? So it's certain things that you have to try new things and things have to evolve. Yes, but I think that with these new, like I said, TikToks and Facebook videos, it's too much. I'm not sure where they're getting these flavors from. Some of those flavors don't match. I can look at it and see if that's gonna taste good. You know what I mean? Like y'all can make it look as pretty as you want. It's not gonna taste well. So that's what I think the biggest challenge.
That's wonderful. Julie?
Mine too. I was actually gonna say the exact same thing. I think I'm a traditionalist, so I don't want to see your gumbo with corn and hot dogs and all these things. And this is what people are putting out now. And you go into the comments and it'll always be people from New Orleans that go in on them and they say all kinds of things. But I think the way you preserve is you write the recipes down. We got to keep the recipes, and people want to keep recipes close to their chest. But I could write a recipe and you could cook it and it's going to still be, it's not going to be mine. Everybody puts their own slant and their twist to it. But if we don't write it down, it's lost. And that's what's happening now. People don't want to give out these recipes. And that's what we're trying, that's what I'm doing now, preserving a lot of family recipes. Because if we don't, our kids don't have it. And it's actually fascinating because some of the recipes will have a spoonful of whatever, but it's not, it's actually the cooking spoon.
Right.
Or the cup was my grandmother's actual little teacup that she used. So it's not a cup of flour, it is her teacup that she used. So it's fascinating and it's so important in how recipes have evolved. Some to the point of the TikTok people with the eggs and the gumbo and all that stuff. But then, you know, others just that type of stuff, the spoons and the cups and whatever. And I think that it's really important. So I ask all of you, document, write them down, pass them on, because otherwise it'll get lost.
Well, for me, that's my biggest problem. I don't write anything down.
Right.
My son now, he's like, well, you gotta get it written, write these things down. When you gonna write it down? When you gonna write it down? But I just, again, everything is on the eye. But the great thing about recipe is though, like I do it with my grandkids is it's a teaching moment. You could teach kids, especially numbers with recipes. You know, I'd say, well, I had this recipe, it made etouffee for 20 people, but I need it for 200. So help me figure out how I need to make this for 200. What we need to do? Let's multiply these ounces of this spice and that spice and all that, and give me the right numbers. So recipes can be fun, but again, I find them unnecessary. You know, because it's in my DNA. It's in my DNA. Yes, but you need to write them down, pass them on, and because you know the kids, they really they're not really into it. But as you said, though, I can feel I can pass any one pot and grab the spoon and stir it a little bit, and I'm gonna kick that pot up a notch. It's in me. It's just something. Okay, you had a recipe down to the pack, but mine's not gonna come out like yours, and yours not gonna come out like mine. You know, so it's important for the recipes, but at the same time, you still have to have that love that you're stirring into whatever you cook, what you're cooking. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think we've covered a lot of things, a lot of great information, but we've got a wonderful group here. So we want some of your questions and comments. So I'm going to open this up as a question and answer period. If you have any questions for our panel, please raise your hand. I'll acknowledge it, and we'll go ahead and see if we can go ahead and have a nice spirited conversation right here in the front.
This has been overwhelmingly just fascinating for me because recently I had a family member who passed away, and I was just saying to Ms. Bayham that I need to write down a lot of stuff. My mother's recipes, my sister's recipes, my aunt's recipes, and I'm going to work on this project, but you all have just brought back so many memories. Everything, when you mentioned the pane meat, I hate to say it, but I have not had pane meat since my mother passed away 7 years ago. Just hearing the different dishes, I wasn't the one who did the cooking. I always ate their food, but so this is just wonderful. This is just wonderful for me.
When you spoke about the different jambalayas, my aunt used to make a jambalaya that was brown, but she called it dirty rice. Is there a difference I remember she used gizzards and I think livers and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a difference.
So then how is the brown jambalaya constructed? With the roux?
It's a roux base, yeah.
Yeah, no tomatoes and.
And no tomatoes.
No tomatoes. Mhm.
Oh, you can walk with it. Okay. I wanted to ask you, I worked in hospitality in hotels, restaurants when I graduated out of high school, mostly in the hotels. But I could identify what this chef said about pay scale. But I just remember when that whole craze with the black and red fish, I was so tired of people asking me, is it spicy? Is the food spicy? In our restaurants, and I would say, what do you mean? Pepper? Hot? You're talking about heat, hot? Or are you talking about seasoning? And there is a difference,
Yes.
a big difference between pepper hot, with the spices coming up the cans with all these different things they've got crushed in there, versus fresh seasoning, which they didn't seem to know the difference, because we kind of got gelled in with the Cajun, with the Prud'homme, with the black and red fish and all this hot pepper.
Right.
So how do you try to distinguish that when people are cooking today? Because I think it's fading a little bit with everything was hot, hot, hot. Is it hot, spicy, spicy? Versus is this fresh seasoning that we're cooking with in New Orleans? But I want to make one other comment about passing it on. Our mothers were home when we were young, and they were cooking in the kitchens. My mother didn't work. She had 7 kids. And a lot of us here, we relate to our moms and grandparents, my grandmother, where, we watched them cook all these great dishes. And I think that's kind of why, the younger generations today are not carrying on so much of what we were there watching. So if you could just explain a little bit more about seasoning versus spices.
Anybody want- I know I have the blackened thing, because I always tell people when they say black and red fish, you mean burnt fish? I mean, it's really, that's when you do cast iron skillet, you put a lot of a dry rub on it, and then you burn it. I mean, that's what it is. But it was that same thing when I talk about the Cajun influence and how they had to cook because of their traditions. Everything, pepper is one of these things, it'll burn your palate, you won't taste another thing.
Right.
You put too much pepper, you won't taste anything else but pepper. It'll burn your palate. And I always tell people, you put the right amount of pepper, it'll be a part of the seasoning blend, and it'll leave a latent amount of that taste to it. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, that is true. So you say like Paul put on blackened season, a lot of it is not just pepper, it's the garlic and onions and, a little bit of thyme and things like that. So it's, yeah, so, and it's not, so it's more flavor than spice. And the blackened, it just comes, I think the garlic and the paprika, it what really makes it burn and give it that black look on it. But for the most part, in black, if someone's asked you that about blackened fish, no, it's really not spicy. It's just flavor.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment on how do we pass it on? Just like we do for the music. New Orleans is known for its music and its food. You have so many places that have music school. Why can't we do that for the food?
Comment?
I will say this, I just was having this conversation with my husband last night. A lot of the culture in New Orleans is lost. Post-Katrina, a lot of companies didn't come back. I noticed a lot of California style influence. You can't go to Mackenzie no more. It's just certain things and trying to explain that to people who's not from here is really hard. That's where all our culture was at. All these small mom and pop places that had the bakeries or different things set up. That's where all of our culture was at. I agree, writing stuff down, I don't cook by recipe at all. Everything I do is like him. I kind of look at it. And I'm a visual person, so it has to taste good and it has to look good. Spices for me, don't give me anything what I call hot. I don't like hot food at all. That spicy, that burn your palate till you can't taste anything. You're not gonna taste that in my food unless someone specifically say make them spicy.
And as you get older, as I have, I can't deal with spicy food.
Anyway, you can't stomach it.
Almost everywhere I go, food is so spicy that I cannot eat it.
You can't enjoy
And I
it.
keep saying, New Orleans is Creole and not Cajun.
Right.
So I can't eat spicy food anymore.
Yeah. I never did like spicy food.
Oh, okay, I want to do like Donahue. Donahue used to run. Now, we have somebody over here. Here we go, here.
I want to know, how do you make your oyster patty shell?
Oh, I don't make the shell.
So where are you getting your oyster patty shell?
So now, Robert's actually sells them.
In New York.
We're in New York.
Oh.
You call us up and we'll ship it to you.
Wah, wah.
Where'd you get your veal now?
Well, there's probably some small butchers that you can get. You Duradax, you can get veal. There's a McCord's Butchery in Metairie that just opened up. They do veal. There's certain places that'll carry veal. You just have to look. Canseco's has veal. They have some smaller markets that'll have them, and there'll be good cuts because some of it, sometimes when it's large fabricated, it won't be the best.
Zupardo's.
Yeah, your independents. Your independents. Where else? Oh, right here. Okay. I know Donnie. I don't have the white hair, but I'm coming.
Keep him running.
Keep me running. She's like, he'll sleep good at night.
Okay, I'll pass it to you. My question is about Cowan, because we grew up around Easter time or First Holy Communion time. It was the tradition, and I was wondering if Cowan was one of those dishes that we may lose, because it was such a process to prepare it.
Yeah. Yeah. You used to hang them and they used to bleed them. Yeah.
Right.
My question is addressing the greens. You talked about people putting greens in gumbo. What about gumbo zab? Do you all?
I've never heard of that.
So
It's totally different than that. When she said that, I've seen it. It's like pickled meat and greens in a broth, like a soup. It's not, and they called it gumbo, not gumbo zab with the 9 greens and
herbs.
what, the gumbo zab, not this greens gumbo where they
Yeah,
put a
just
piece of
something-
cornbread in it.
Okay. So that's not gumbo zab. Do any of you make gumbo zab?
That's what I'm saying. The one what she was talking about on TikTok, it's not. It's like smothered greens with pickled meat, a piece of cornbread, and a broth. Gumbo zab is not like that. That's actually
No.
legit gumbo.
But I think that's the only time that Dookie does that.
Holy
on Holy
Thursday.
Thursday. And you have to book a year in advance for a table.
Yeah, plus you use 9 to 13 different greens to make gumbo zab. It is a process. It is a process.
Uneven.
We'll come back to it. Ms. Watts.
Someone wanted to know what happened to Cowan. Well, a few years ago, there were two little gentlemen from over the lake around Madisonville and Mandeville. And we had a place on St. Bernard Avenue that was selling Kawan, all dressed. I bought many of them. And on London Avenue, we had another place selling Kawan. These were being caught by individuals who were not professional fishermen. They were people who lived in the area. They just about cleaned out all of the Kawan, by the way. So now if someone gets a Kawan, which is rare, okay, they have Kawan for Easter dinner. But the Kawan it takes many years for them to grow to a size that they can be edible, okay? So if you go across the lake and you float around and you may see some fishermen out there and they're selling something, seafood, ask them on the side if they got a Kawan, okay? Because I understand they're putting some laws against them, taking them out of the area. It takes many years for a turtle to grow to a size that it's edible.
And I don't think what you ordered in the restaurants today is turtle. I mean, they say it's turtle. No, what you're saying is true, and I remember my grandfather and all my uncles, they would hang those Kawans upside down and they would bleed them, you know, the drip, bleed them for the stew. But today, I don't think that is turtle. They may say it on the menu in some of the higher end restaurants. I don't think it is. Don't taste like it.
Okay, one more question.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about the filet gumbo. You know how we were taught in the 7th Ward to make the roux, to make the really good taste of a filet gumbo, and had to make it really, really dark and stirring up all till it gets really dark, and it took a lot of time. Well, years back, I've learned from a friend of mine from New Orleans that I don't have to do that, and I started doing it ever since, putting some flour in a cup, water, kitchen bouquet, and just okay, and stirring it up really good and pouring it in the hot gumbo that you made, and it tastes good. So my question was, have you all ever heard of that, and what do you think about it? And I could see I'm about to get blessed out.
She think about.
Yeah, but I've been doing it and I like it, but it's not the same as doing the roux, you know, but have mercy.
All right. So yeah, you're gonna see a lot of things on the shelf. You'll see a lot of things that are quick and fix. But for those that have a seasoned palate from their families and seen these traditions, you know what it tastes like when it's real. Because of time constraints, we've had a wonderful conversation. Let's thank our panelists, Lorie Bell, Julie Vaucresson, Chef Jeff Heard. And we want to thank you all because of your interest and your concern and your love of the culture. Now, of course, you know, as we always do, when we have great conversation and community, what do we usually follow that with? Wonderful feast. So we're going to let Lauren and her husband, I don't know if y'all need to go first or go do whatever, but we want to thank y'all all for coming. Thank all of our visitors who are on the Zoom. Yeah, you may not have been here, but you got a lot of information. So that means you got to book the flight and come down next year and be here in person at next year's conference. Other than that, thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Dan.